egotistical, so unpredictable, here on the SNL network.
Hello and welcome everyone to another edition of the Superfan Takeover. This is the show where a couple of SNL superfans get together to reminisce on the important moments throughout SNL history. My name is Sammy Kay, and I'm so excited to be joined by this amazing panel. Obviously, we have a writer's strike looming, but in the case of that not going down, anticipation of the Pete Davidson hosted episode with musical guest Lil Uzi Vert. Tonight, we're going to take a look back at our favorite moments from episodes hosted by SNL cast alumni. So, obviously, we just had Molly Shannon back in Studio 8H, and there's been so many great alumni that have come back to the show over the years, going all the way back to season 3, where Chevy Chase hosted episode 11 with musical guest Billy Joel. And since then, many SNL greats have come back, Eddie Murphy, Kristen Wiig, Adam Sandler. And just to be clear for everybody at home, we're just going to be talking about, cast members. So apologies to Conan O'Brien. Maybe one day we'll talk about writers that have gotten the chance to host, but we're going to be focused on the cast. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And I'm going to go more into detail about everything that we'll be talking about in today's episode. But let me introduce our panel. Firstly, we got our resident SNL historian. We got Bill Kenney. Bill, how you doing?
Sammy, I'm great. This is such a great topic. Still coming off the high of Molly hosting a few weeks back. And when you mentioned the topic, I was really excited because what I do to keep it interesting in off weeks is I'll randomly pick a season to rewatch. So right before you said that, I started rewatching season 22, one of my favorite seasons. And that's the infamous 5 alumni in a row, which we got Dana Carvey, Chris Rock, Robert Downey, Phil Hartman, and Marty Short. So I was already in the alumni mode. I was really kind of pumped up to let this energy out. So I'm excited to get into this tonight.
No, absolutely. And as always, I got to ask, how many sketches or episodes do you think you watched before joining us tonight?
I didn't watch all the alumni episodes, and there were certainly sketches I skipped over, but I probably watched maybe about 200 sketches, give or take.
Bill is always making us look absolutely terrible on the show, but that's why we love to have you here. But next up, we got my man Andrew Haskell, the only Andrew on the panel tonight. Haskell, how you feeling about that?
Listen, I got this whole Andrew cave to myself today. That's great. I thought Bill was going to say, to keep things interesting, but on off weeks, he watches every 47 previous season between episodes, because that seems like his style. Excited though. I mean, there's no kind of, whether it be big pop star, young hot movie star, there's nothing that really gets the hype going like an alumni coming back. So it's really cool to be able to sit back and go through some of those moments.
Absolutely. And next up, I'm very excited that she's joining us on the panel tonight. It is Rebecca North. Rebecca, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm losing my Superfan Takeover virginity tonight. It's actually my first time doing one of these. And what a good one. I know Haskell just said that, but there's no episode that gets more hype or more camaraderie and gets me personally more excited than a returning cast member hosting. So I'm honored to be joining this Superfan Takeover as my first one.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just, to be clear, you have joined us on the draft episodes here on the Superfan Takeover, but, I guess we can kind of, distinguish those as separate categories,
Yeah, just like a standard episode, I mean.
These are way less intense in terms of the trash talking.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And way shorter, I'm not holding in my bladder for 2 hours or 3 hours.
Yeah. I didn't take pre-workout before this one. The drafts for sure.
Well, great. Well, actually, you should have done that, but no, that's great. And we're really happy to have you here. And yeah, like I said, we're going to be basically how tonight's episode is going to work. Each of the superfans, including myself, will have brought 3 either sketches or moments from a cast alumni hosted episode of Saturday Night Live. I was looking through, all the different cast members that have hosted, and I think like it's close to like 40 cast members throughout the history of the show have hosted. I mean, you have people like Billy Crystal who even hosted before they joined the cast of the show. So not really sure if that counts, but we're going to be talking about when you come back. You're kind of coming back for your high school reunion in a sense when you're a cast member who has left the show and is finally able to host. So we're going to be making throughout the episode like a ranked list of all of our choices, and the super fans are going to kind of have to hash it out. Maybe they think they pick the best moments, or maybe they're like, oh, my moments aren't so good. I'm going to put my vote towards somebody else's on the list, and I think it's going to make for a really fun discussion. But before we get into our actual picks, I did want to go around and ask the super fans, one question. Obviously, we just saw this with Molly Shannon. We may not be seeing this with Pete Davidson, this coming Saturday. But I feel like everybody has different expectations or things that they anticipate when a cast member returns to Studio 8H. So I was wondering, and I'm going to start with Bill. What is the most important thing that you're looking for when it's announced that like a former cast member is coming back to host? Like, is there a particular thing you're excited about or looking forward to seeing in the episode?
Yeah, I got to talk about this a little bit with Mike Murray on that Molly Shannon episode. I think the most important thing to me, we talk about how many recurring characters they're going to do. Do we want everything to come back? Do we want to see new stuff from them? But the most important thing is to see them interact with this new cast, especially if they've been gone a long time. With somebody like Pete coming back, it's not going to be as nostalgic. It's been less than a year. It'll be fun to see him work with some of the newer people who are on the show. But with somebody like Molly, who's been gone for almost 25 years, it was really fun to see her interact. And it brings these casts together in a way. I mean, they've talked about this on Fly on the Wall and things like that. It's a family. And even if you weren't part of their cast or you were 30 years before your cast, they have a bond together because this is such a unique experience. So to me, what I want to see is a lot of cast interaction with that alumni.
Absolutely. All right, Haskell, I'm going to go to you next. Same question. If there's anything particular that comes to mind when you're kind of excited to see somebody coming back.
Yeah, I think it's very close to Bill. It's kind of meeting the cast in the middle. We've seen it before where these episodes become a little too much of just parading out old characters and there's no real flow. But in the same breath, I still want it to I want to see their brand of humor. I want there to be a little bit of feeling like I'm watching their era again, as opposed to just kind of going with the flow of the new cast. So if they can meet them in the middle, then those I think are what create the really great alumni episodes.
Yeah. And Rebecca, do you have anything you want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, well, while meeting the cast in the middle makes a good episode, when I personally see a returning cast member host, I immediately go on YouTube and look up their recurring character sketches just to get myself a little pregame to see what we're going to see. And then I feel like the monologue usually sets the tone as to what you're going to expect. And if they're making references to their time on SNL, then they're going to have some recurring characters, maybe a guest star or two to join them. But sometimes you get a recurring one and maybe it's not on their first time back, it's on their fourth or fifth time back. And it's just a general monologue. I actually get excited to see what new characters, because there's so many legendary, and I know we'll dive into a lot of those throughout this episode, but a lot of legendary characters that are created or sketches with the recurring cast member in the new one, and that becomes part of their brand. So then the next time they come back to host, it's, will they do that newer character again?
No, absolutely. And I can already think of, examples of that come to mind, and maybe we'll touch on those in this episode. But let's get started with our picks. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill. What is the moment or sketch that you want to start us off with?
Well, I'm going to go with a very recent one. It was somebody who we all anticipated coming back for a very long time. Had a falling out with the show in a way, didn't even know they were fired. So I know, even though we didn't have a podcast at the time, I know all of us were excited when Adam Sandler was coming back. We're all big Adam Sandler fans. So the thing that stuck out to me, there's two moments, and the other one may come up later. But as far as funny and seeing them interact with the cast, Sandler family reunion to me was one of my favorite moments from that episode and from that season. If you don't remember, he walks into this family reunion and is immediately greeted by some of the current cast, Kyle and Mikey and Pete and Adie, and they're all doing the Sandler voice. And it just kind of escalates from there. And eventually we end up getting a surprise cameo from both Kristen Wiig and Jimmy Fallon. Jimmy had actually come across the country to do this cameo appearance and hadn't even been at rehearsal. But I think it's one of those moments that Fallon was really good in as well. So we got kind of a meshing of three different eras with, Kristen and Fallon and Sandler, plus the new cast. It was just like a big warm hug. It's a really great moment, the Sandler family reunion.
Yeah, no, that's a great pick, and that episode was just so exciting to see announced. Something we really never thought was going to happen because of maybe some potential bad blood around that time. Rebecca, do you want to chime in here?
Yeah, I mean, when I was thinking of my picks, the first episode and the first host to come back is Adam Sandler. I think a lot of the behind the scenes drama definitely led to a lot of the anticipation for this. When will he host every season? I would think to myself, like, oh, Adam Sandler will come. And then he finally did with a bang. And I think that specific choice of a sketch where they're really embracing Adam Sandler and all the Sandlerisms. And I think that kind of confirmed that there is not bad blood. Otherwise, they would have just had him host and made good sketches and normal, but they really made a sketch about Adam Sandler. And I honestly can't think of a time where they have even done this in the past. So I think that's a pretty epic sketch. And he came back really, really big.
Yeah, actually, Rebecca, I don't know if you remember this sketch, but they did a similar thing with Jim Carrey when he came back to host. They did the Jim Carrey family reunion, and people like Jim Carrey and Adam Sandler. They have so many just great characters that they're able to kind of have people impersonate and do their own spin on, which is a lot of fun. And Christopher Walken as well, as Bill just reminded me in the chat. All right, Haskell, going to go over to you. What is your pick that you want to bring?
Well, there's a few more moments from the Sandler episode that I really want to pick and are on my list, but I'm going to save that for later. For me, it's like I'm looking for these moments that acknowledge that it's an alumni and that you can only really have it in that moment. And it's hard to get away from monologues. So I'm going to start with a monologue. Maybe the best monologue the show has ever seen and the best victory lap that we've ever seen. And that's the Norm Macdonald monologue, where he comes back and he essentially makes one joke. A year and a half ago, I was fired for not being funny enough to be on the show. And now a year and a half later, I was asked to host the show, which means I either got really funny, which didn't happen, or the show kind of sucks now, right? And it's this really raw moment. To the point where if you go back and watch it, he kind of gets booed for saying it. There's some jeers in the crowd of oh, don't say that, man. But it is so, absolutely 100% Norm. There's some great little, where he's like, yeah, that guy, that was me on the show. And the news thing, that was me. And it's just great. And it's one of the shortest monologues I think you'll ever see. I think it clocks in at 3 minutes, maybe, that counting his introduction. So it's really short. It's really one joke, and it's the only joke it needs. It's great.
Bill, this is a great pick. Obviously, we lost Norm Macdonald a couple of years ago now, which is very sad. But this is just such a memorable moment and so surprising at the time to kind of see, based on the situation. Obviously, we have two cast members that have been fired, back to back between Adam Sandler and Norm Macdonald so far on the list. So, what do you think of this one, and where would you rank it against your own pick?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those moments. I can remember them announcing that Norm was going to come back and host, and it just being one of those double take moments. It's such a strange thing to have him come back. I think the only one I would put above that would be Damon Wayans as far as alumni, where he was essentially fired too for kind of going off script and doing his own thing back in 1985. And, Norm actually stuck around after Weekend Update. He was still in sketches the rest of that season, but he was essentially fired twice. So to have him come back, especially so soon, was a shock. And for him to do this monologue the way he did it is completely Norm. I mean, you wouldn't expect anything less from him. So yeah, it's definitely up there for me. I would still put it a little bit under Sandler Reunion, but it's definitely one of the best monologues we've seen.
That's interesting placement. I mean, do people feel good about having Sandler Family Reunion and then Norm's monologue, or I mean Haskell or
Yeah.
Rebecca? Do you have?
Oh,
that's how you're feeling?
I protest the hell out of that.
Yeah,
But
I see.
it's the majority vote.
Well, Haskell, and I don't know if I should be kind of staying impartial somewhat because then it makes it annoying for ties. But I don't know. I'm kind of leaning the other way here with the monologue. That Sandler Family Reunion sketch is very funny and like definitely is kind of what you're looking for in alumni coming back to host. But I don't know, this monologue just feels so iconic, and acknowledging of the show's history. So I'm kind of leaning the other way. But honestly I don't know what to do in this situation with the tie. So I kind of want to just give it Haskell.
Yeah, leave it at 2. I'm sure there'll be
Yeah.
another moment that comes up.
Yeah. Okay. We'll leave it at 2. So for people watching at home, we have number 1 Sandler Family Reunion, number 2 Norm Macdonald monologue. So that is what we have so far. You can already see that things are getting heated here on the Superfan Takeover, and let's keep the heat going. Rebecca, I want to hear what you have brought as your first pick.
So my first pick here is actually something that it's one of those when I go back and watch older, because this was before my time, watching SNL, or I think even living, would be actually Bill Murray returning and doing the Quotable Caddyshack. I think it's just a classic. Also, in terms of sketch structure, they nailed it. They took a very standard type of commercialized sketch called Sketched, and they made it the Quotable Caddyshack. And for pop culture drama behind the scenes, I know Chevy Chase and Bill Murray only had one scene together in Caddyshack, but they kind of squashed their beef during that. So it was great to then see them do this sketch when Bill came back to host and kind of publicly squash that beef while doing this Quotable Caddyshack. And it's just funny. It's good. It's a classic when I think back to returning host doing something that's very them outside of SNL and bringing it back into the show. I think that's a really cool way to do that.
Yeah, no, that is a great pick, Rebecca. I mean, earlier today I was, just in the spirit of this episode, was watching an interview that Chevy Chase gave on Howard Stern in 2008. Talking
I watched
about
that today also.
yeah. No, talking about and this could be a moment that we talk about later. Just the bad blood or the kind of feud that came about between Bill Murray and Chevy Chase. After Chevy had left the show, and then Bill kind of replaced him as a cast member. So seeing this sketch with the two of them together on screen, they're kind of squashing the beef in that moment. Bill, do you have any thoughts on Quotable Caddyshack?
Yeah, I think it was when I was rewatching a lot of this particular episode that it came to me that I want to rank all of the alumni episodes on my own, because this is one of the best alumni episodes overall, I think, that we had. Bill was always, he's got this personality that he's prickly but I think when he came back and hosted, he always was amazing. He famously came back in season 6 with the new cast and tried to get that on track. So every time he came back was always really, really exciting, especially the big movie star that he had become. And this episode in particular was fantastic. There's another moment that I'm not going to bring up that may come up later from this episode. But yeah, to see these two, they're both labeled original era, the not ready for primetime players, even though they weren't in the cast at the same time. And because of all the beef that they had. So to see these two working together was fantastic. And Chevy was already partially shadow banned from the show at this point. He had hosted in '97 and then never came back to host. So the fact that he was even in the building was pretty impressive. So yeah, it's definitely on my list.
Yeah, and as far as ranking goes, I mean, Rebecca, since this was your pick, I mean, do you have a feeling of where you'd want to place this? Would you want to place it, do you have any like just initial thoughts?
Yeah, obviously I'm biased, but I would say this one's number one because that's just the Bill's point. If we don't get to any more sketches from this episode, this one should be ranked really high in terms of an epic episode, let alone just a good sketch all around.
Interesting. Do either of you guys agree with putting this at number one, or Bill? It seems like you're biting your lip here. What are you thinking?
Well, this is really hard ranking these on the fly.
That's
I
the
don't know.
tension that's coming with this episode.
It is.
We
It's
just gotta
added a
put you on the
new
spot.
it's added a new spice to the mix here. Yeah, I think I would, just because it's original era. You're never going to get more iconic than having two original cast members come back, essentially. So yeah, I'll put it number one.
Okay. You know, I think that feels right, and I do think that we've never really done these rankings on the fly before, so I think at the end of the episode when we have our rankings, we'll take a look at them holistically one last time, and then we can make some minor adjustments if things don't feel a certain way. So yeah, I think let's just go with that. So we're gonna put Quotable Caddyshack at number one, Sandler Family Reunion at number two, and then Norm's monologue at number three. Okay. So I guess that means I am going to go next. And, what am I going to pick? Okay. I'm going to pick this because this is something that I was very upset that I did not get in our ultimate episode draft. So, I kind of want to, I think I was able to talk about it a little bit then, but want to talk about it now. It's from the Will Ferrell hosted episode in 2009. Haskell, you got in the draft, buddy. So if this was on your list, it's like, that them's the breaks. But it's Goodnight Saigon, which is, really just like it's like a moment where when I look back on it, I'm like, it was early days of me watching the show, and it was kind of like, this is like the magic. It's kind of like the intangibility that, a show like SNL has that pretty much every other show on television does not. And it's just, anybody can show up at any time. And you have an alumni like Will Ferrell coming back. And, it's not just like these kind of frivolous cameos. That's not like the reason why this is such an iconic sketch. It's there's actual like kind of emotion to it, and you kind of tie it into the fact that it was Daryl Hammond's last episode, and it's just kind of this like just amazing crescendo of just like I don't know, a moment in time. Is that like, it's just like a weird thing to say? Like it really just feels like a time capsule of that era of the show, and it's all spearheaded by Will Ferrell, and it's kind of my mission on this podcast as we get more interviews with alumni to kind of figure out how did this sketch come together, because I think it's just like kind of fascinating. So that's my pick. Haskell, I'm gonna bring it over to you. Like I said, you drafted this. I want to hear what you think and where you'd rank it.
I had to draft it because it's one of my favorite moments ever. Like, Sammy, me and you, kindred spirits, man. Like we're like the same age. We kind of experienced the show the same way. When you say a moment in time, like for me, that was the last episode that aired before I entered high school, right? And they always say SNL was the best when you were in high school. I don't think so. I think SNL is the best to you when you're in middle school and you're discovering the show, and it's a bunch of stuff you really shouldn't be seeing at that age, but you love it. And to me, that moment, that episode, and I know it wasn't like his first episode back, like it wasn't that, but it's just, to me, what I loved about it. It was this guy, and it was Will Ferrell really at his height, but he came from this time in the show that I didn't really remember all too well, but like people who were cooler than me that were older remembered it. So it was finally getting to experience Will Ferrell, this guy I grew up watching his movies, experiencing him in his element on SNL. And on top of that, he's doing it with my people, with my cast. And you get this perfectly random, out of nowhere sketch with all these random cameos, and it doesn't really make sense. And all in all, it's my favorite. It might be my favorite moment of the show that's not an outright farewell to a cast member. I know it's Daryl Hammond's last sketch, but it wasn't really a farewell sketch to him. And it's always been one of my favorite moments on the show.
So, with that being said, would you put this at number one so far? Because I feel like it's like a pretty strong case for number one, or at least number two. What do you think?
So my rankings are all sort of skewed because I would have never allowed Norm to fall to 3. So I have to put this at 1 because it means more to me, and I think it's a better moment than what we already have at 1 and 2.
Bill, what do you think?
Even though I'm younger than both of you, listen, this was one of those moments for me too. I don't think there's anything close in this era of the show. And for me, I mean, the thing that attached me to it, besides all of the emotion and having Will back, Will being one of my favorite cast members, but Will was on the show when I was in college, and Goodnight Saigon was one of our songs in college. You know, we closed down the bar with Goodnight Saigon. So to have all of this come back like a decade later and just kind of bring itself together, plus it being Daryl's moment, yeah, number 1 for sure.
Rebecca, do you agree with this?
I fully agree. I didn't have the luxury of getting to watch this live or being part of that because I was way too young, but I will go back and watch this all the time. And like, that is one that I'm envious of you for all being able to get to see that live, because when I watch it back, I get chills and I'm like, I can't even imagine, like, you all remember the first time you saw this sketch, and that's a number 1 sketch for sure.
Yeah, no, it's great. I'm really happy to see this at number 1. And let's just recap the rankings we have so far. Number 1, Goodnight Saigon. Number 2, Quotable Caddyshack. Number 3, Sandler Family Reunion. And number 4, Norm Macdonald's Monologue. So that ends round 1. Some interesting picks so far. I think solid for sure. And we only have 3 rounds here, so just look at your lists and see what do you really want to be shared. And I'm going to go to Haskell here next. Haskell, what do you want to, share as your pick for this round?
Man, tough situation, because I was like, Goodnight Saigon's going to be there, and it's not. And I hate to go monologue back to back, but I'm going with my favorite monologue of all time. We're going back to the Sandman episode. I Was Fired is one of the great moments of this era of the show. We already talked about what it meant for Sandler coming back, and for him to have that moment where he says, "I won." And it's really funny because, like I said, Norm came back and said, well, if I'm hosting the show must suck now. And he got a little jeered for it. People laughed, but he got booed. But when Sandler says, all the money he made at the box office, so I guess I won, the crowd goes wild. And it just shows, like, in that moment, you see what the entertainer Adam Sandler means to, I think at this point, multiple generations of comedy fans. And it's a funny monologue. It's a classic sort of simple rhyme scheme Sandler song. Chris Rock shows up with the great line about then he moved to In Living Color, and they took that off TV right away. And then you got that classic Pete Davidson moment of coming out saying, "I was fired." No, you weren't, Pete. How was I not fired yet? I think that's also one of Pete Davidson's greatest moments on the show. So, throwing that one on the board.
Yeah, this is an excellent pick. And yeah, that Sandler episode, I'll be really curious to see. I know he had talked in interviews recently about possibly coming back, how he kind of goes about, topping that episode or, because it's just such an iconic kind of return to the show. And yeah, I just saw Adam Sandler on tour like last week and it was amazing. So just had to give that shout out. The Sandman. Rebecca, I'm going to bring you in here. What do you think of I Was Fired, and where would you rank it?
So this was going to be my round one pick, but we already had a great Adam Sandler moment, and I knew this would get brought up. So I feel happy Haskell took that. I would have done it this round too, but I was like, let's give some other people their credit in the first one, although it's such an epic sketch monologue, honestly. And yeah, it's so triumphant. It's catchy. Like I could sing the whole thing in my head. And I mean, honestly, anytime Adam Sandler can talk about Chris Farley, even in the one line here, like I told Chris Farley that I was fired and he said, Sandman, they fired me too. Like I always I don't know, I get nostalgic and it's just, he takes any opportunity to shout him out. So I'm like, this was the perfect way to do it in the sketch, in the monologue. And this is a really solid pick. And we were never going to get through this whole Superfan Takeover without someone taking this. And that's signs of a good monologue.
And so, Rebecca, I have to ask the question, where would you rank this?
I'd put this in number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I was going as well, like right in between Goodnight Saigon and Quotable Caddyshack. Bill, do you feel good about that?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. Haskell?
Yep.
All right, great. But we're all so civil, no one wants to upset anybody. But maybe that'll come soon. I'm going to go back to you, Rebecca. What is your next pick here?
So my next pick is actually a twofer because it's 2 returning cast members. And I know we have some pretty iconic duos. This one's my favorite of the duos that have come back and return to host. And the specific sketch I'm choosing, while there are so many that these 2 people did, I like it a lot because it's just any standard SNL sketch. It didn't have to be these hosts, but they made it that much better. And I think that is the sign of someone who was not only a good cast member, but a good host on their own. Like if they weren't on the show, they could have come back and been pretty solid on hosting. And that is Tina Fey and Amy Poehler doing Meet Your Second Wife. This could have been for anyone. It was not specifically tailored for the 2 of them, but that's where I think the magic came in, because when the writers are writing a sketch with a specific host in mind, it's very to them, but letting them take this more generic type of sketch and put their own flair on it is where I think the magic really happened.
No, yeah, this is kind of a modern classic here. Meet Your Second Wife. I think this was also brought up in the Ultimate Episode Draft episode. Bill,
yeah, and I didn't get it, and I was mad about that.
See, I feel like this this episode is kind of like a redemption for a lot of us. Just like, yeah, we're just picking things that we like didn't get. I actually picked that. I just remembered I picked I Was Fired for my monologue for the episode. So we a lot of great returning moments. Bill, I'm gonna go to you here. What are your thoughts on this? And do you have a gut feeling right now about where you would rank it?
Yeah, this is one of the better moments in the last 10 years of the show, not even just alumni episodes overall. I think this is one of the sharpest, funniest sketches they put out for a show that puts out a game show sketch about every 1.2 episodes, to find a fresh and interesting take, and to have 2 obvious foils with Tina and Amy. It was fantastic the way they played this. I don't think anybody could have done this. I think Keenan could have done this. I think a couple other alumni, but I think Tina and Amy, with their specific talents, were able to kind of put this over the top. Where would I put it? Boy, that's hard. The list just gets tougher and tougher. I would probably put it around number 4. Maybe right below Quotable Caddyshack.
Haskell, do you have an opinion on the ranking here?
Yeah, we can put it 4.
4. Rebecca, you feel good about that?
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. Guys, we're all on the same wavelength
Okay.
right now.
Yeah,
This feels
yeah,
good.
yeah. Everyone's just like kumbaya. Everything's great. So yeah, so we're gonna have it at number 4, right between Quotable Caddyshack and Sandler Family Reunion. I think that feels right. Definitely. This is a sketch that isn't really, kind of weaponizing our nostalgia, like kind of some of the other stuff that we have on the list, which is going to happen when you bring back a cast member. But I think this is a good place for that. Okay, Bill, I'm going to bring you in for your next pick. What do you want to talk about?
Well, to all of those who have been saying, can you believe Pete's coming back so soon? Has the show ever done this? Yes, they have many times. But maybe the quickest turnaround ever was Eddie Murphy hosting. Not the first time when he was still a cast member, but the second time when he was an alumni. He came back within like 3 or 4 months of him leaving the show in the fall of '84. And it's something that's still played to this day. It resonates, especially in our divided times. White Like Me. This was something that he did in his second hosting gig. If you don't remember, he put on whiteface and decided to go out in the world and see how white people were treated differently than black people. And it hits so many different humorous notes. He walks into a newsstand, and Jim Downey, of all people, is standing there. And he goes to pay for a newspaper, and Jim Downey says, "No, go ahead, take it. It's okay." And he gets on a bus, and there's one other African American on the bus. And when they get off the bus turns into this dance disco, and everybody's and it's just all these great moments, kind of poking the bear about what our society's like, even in 1984. So yeah, there's so many great Eddie moments that we could pick. But this would be the one that I would put on the list.
Yeah, this is definitely like a classic, and it's one that I for a second forgot. I'm like, he wasn't a cast member when he did this, so this is a really great pick. Haskell, going to bring you in for the sketch.
Yeah, I think most people would be pretty surprised. It's an iconic Eddie Murphy moment, and to find out that he wasn't even on the cast, he had already left the show, and still was able to come back and have this. It wasn't an iconic moment in the sense of he brought back a character or really tied to anything that was on the show before. He was just a part of a really iconic and, to an unfortunate degree, timeless sketch at this point. I think a lot of people would also be surprised to see it goes all the way back to the early 80s, depending on when you were born, I guess. So a really cool moment, probably an incomplete list if we didn't include it.
Yeah, that's probably right. And I guess, Haskell, I'm going to put you back on the spot here. Ranking wise, I feel like this has got to be higher up on the list here for what we have so far.
I'm going to put it, if it's up to me, I'm putting it third.
Yeah, I was thinking 2 or 3. Like it could be above I Was Fired. Rebecca, do you have any thoughts on the ranking?
I was thinking third also. I think I was the same thing as Sammy. I was like, wait, he wasn't on the cast when he did this? I completely thought he was. So that's, I mean, a testament as to how, as we started this episode off talking about, how you mesh with like the cast and the new writers and everything goes on. Like, felt like it was when he was on the show. So I'd say 3.
Okay.
But I'm okay with 2. I'm not like fighting that, but I personally think it's 3.
Bill, would you go 2 or 3 or even 1 here?
I wouldn't put it 1. I would consider 2, but I'm okay with 3.
Yeah. Okay. I think for now, let's put it at 3, and then we can kind of revisit it as we go on here. So it's taking the place of Quotable Caddyshack here, and at number 3 and just below I Was Fired. Ooh, this one is tough. I'm gonna go back to myself here, and I think we got to talk about something from the Christmas 2019 episode. Sticking with Eddie Murphy here. When he came back and hosted the show with musical guest Lizzo, such a amazing moment. I remember this is one of the rare times I feel like in modern day SNL or just SNL in general, where I distinctly remember when they announced that Eddie Murphy was coming back to host. I think they had announced like the first episode or two for that season, and then also in the press release, Eddie Murphy Christmas episode, which is just like crazy. Like that never happens. I feel like, with SNL, it's just the way it is. Like, they might book things in advance that far out, but you never know what could happen. And especially with somebody with like Eddie Murphy, who, kind of, didn't really recognize that part of his career, or really, it was a big moment when he came back for SNL 40. And, to have him back was really fantastic. And there's so many great moments from that episode, but I think I got to go with the monologue. That it was just so iconic. Having so many great comedians up there with him, kind of supporting him, during, this amazing moment. I believe, Tracy Morgan's there, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle, Keenan even pops up, and I'm not sure if I'm forgetting anybody else. But no, I mean, this was just like such a great moment, and you kind of see during this monologue that like Eddie, still has it, and we were just in store for just like such a really fun episode where he did bring back so many great characters, which we might talk about later. But this was kind of just like a statement piece of like, I'm Eddie Murphy. I was doing kind of these, family movies for, 2 decades of my career, and I'm here back at, SNL, finally kind of ready to come home. And this was just an amazing moment. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill here. Do you have any thoughts about this monologue, this episode in general, and, where you'd rank it?
Yeah, you make some great points, and to me, I mean, for my history of SNL, he's before my time, but he was so in the culture for so long into the early '90s, and the very first thing I can remember watching from SNL was like the Best of Eddie Murphy VHS tape, and seeing the buckwheat getting shot and things like that. So, and being able to go back and rewatch all of that after loving all his movies. So it's such a hard thing, like Sandler and Murphy coming back so close together after such a long time. It's two very different emotions for me. Sandler was part of one of my casts and Eddie wasn't, but this was such an iconic moment for him to come back. I think they announced it because they wanted to make sure he couldn't back out. Honestly, that's always been my conspiracy theory, that if he backed out, it was going to be on him because they had him locked in for Christmas. But yeah, I mean, the monologue to be on the stage with all of these people who admired him and who credited him for getting into comedy themselves, and who are all iconic as well, was such a great moment. So yeah, this was really big.
Bill, to your last point there, though, one of my favorite things about that, it really has nothing. It doesn't have much to do with Eddie Murphy at all. But I remember after that moment of those like 5 legends on stage, Keenan coming out and being like, it was incredible being on stage with those 4 legends, and seeing the outpour of people being like, no, there were 5 comedy legends on that stage. Don't you forget? Like, it was almost like being able to see Keenan take that moment and be on stage with those 4 other guys and just like get that recognition that he also deserves. And he will eventually, we would think, come back and host and have an iconic moment himself.
100%.
Yeah, and God, and not only is this just like kind of a special moment, but it is really funny. Like just the banter between all these guys, all these legends was so great. And I think like the button at the end with Beck Bennett coming in and being like, "You said it, Chris Rock," and Keenan's like, "Nah, we don't need you." Like it was just like just a classic Beck Bennett moment as well. So I gotta give a shout out to him. And this is really tough. I don't know where I would rank this. My gut is kind of below White Like Me and above Quotable Caddyshack, but I want to hear if anyone has a differing opinion on that.
I'm gonna be the first one really in this episode to me, it's a great moment. It doesn't rank above anything else we've talked about yet so far, though. For me, I think there's some better monologues in there, and there's some better sketches. And I'm glad you mentioned the Beck Bennett thing because that wasn't at the top of my head, so that there was like a funny moment there. But like in terms of like laughable, like memorable moments, not a ton stuck out for me. So I'd have a hard time putting it any higher on the list than 8th.
In that episode, I wanted to pick something, and I really cannot pick between the Mr. Robinson's neighborhood sketch and the Gumby appearance on Weekend Update, and I split the difference and went with the monologue. So
If you
it would
did
be
the Mr.
interesting to see.
Robinsons, that would have gone better for me.
Well, it's still on the board, So, I'm doing you guys a service as the host here. So yeah, I mean, I'm fine putting it at last, or maybe I'm not fine with it, but I'll do it. It's like, I think that's fine. And okay, so that ends the second round, I believe, right? So we have at number. I'm just going to recap it for everybody. At number 8, we have the Eddie Murphy Christmas monologue. At number 7, the Norm Macdonald monologue. Number 6, the Sandler family reunion. Number 5, Meet Your Second Wife. Number 4, Quotable Caddyshack. Number 3, White Like Me. Number 2, I Was Fired. And number 1, Goodnight Saigon. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Start with Rebecca here for the last round. Give her, the first bite of the apple here. And what is your pick for this round?
So I'm gonna say similar to what your thought process for the Eddie Murphy Christmas episode. I think back to a standout episode in my mind of a returning cast member, and it's Bill Hader coming back for season 43, 2018, and there were a lot of good, really good moments here. Obviously a classic like Stefan coming back to update, and one of my favorite sketches that I'm not going to say here because I don't think it's like as iconic, but the Jurassic Park auditions, like Pete Davidson as Adam Sandler is like burned into my mind. But from this episode, I want to say that Bill Hader started off with an unconventional manner, and he went from a monologue straight into the Californians. And there's twofold why I'm choosing this here. It's first of all, it's because you see all the cast members get ready and get set up for the Californians. And I love when they break a semi fourth wall here to really show us how it's being made. And it's grouped in. It's like monologue and Californians into one. So it kind of makes it the super choice here. And I really, really like this. While maybe it's not the funniest episode of the Californians, like looking here, there were 2 in season 37, 4 in 38, and I thought they wrapped it up in the 40th special. That one was good, nostalgic, all over the place. All these random celebrities popping up left and right, and Betty White redeemed it there. But I thought it was done. I thought that's it for the Californians for us. When I saw Bill Hader hosting, I had a whole other slew of sketches I thought he might do, recurring characters. And then to see the monologue, you didn't even have time to take a breather and say, I wonder if he's going to do it. It goes right into it. I think that was so iconic. And it satiated me for the Californians kind of as a wrap up and kind of redeemed the 40th episode, the 40th special one in my mind. So that seemed like a great farewell to the really, really beloved sketch and so many recurring characters. And Fred Armisen came back to play Stuart. Like I don't know. I love that one.
Yeah, this is so interesting. And it's funny that you mentioned the 40th anniversary because yeah, I mean that was super exciting. Like when that happened, and like the cameos were, a range of amazing to like I don't know, not to hate on. Okay. I'm glad you said it and not me. That was something. But yeah, no, this is a fun pick. Haskell, I know you want to jump in here. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I see on the internet now that there's this phrase being thrown around, millennial core, which is like that, very specific millennial culture. And the Californians kind of jumps in and is definitely a part of that to me. I feel like if you watched SNL at this time or you grew up with that cast, there's something about the Californians that just kind of sticks with you. And you're like, it's funny. Like it's good. And then if you didn't grow up, you're like, what is this? So I'm kind of shocked that we went, 2 rounds. We're 8 in and we're pretty light on returning, recurring characters. I don't think anybody would have had us with the Californians first. So, and to me, it probably gets a little bit of a bump because, like what Rebecca was talking about, kind of doing it a little bit different.
Yeah, exactly. Because like the
Right.
Kristen Wiig host one was a great use of a recurring host, whatever, but that didn't hit for me as well as like this last one, the mechanism. Otherwise, I don't think I would have chosen a Californian sketch if it wasn't the way that Bill Hader did it.
So exactly. So even with that moment, though, Sammy, I think the good news is, as much as I love the Californians, I don't think the Eddie Murphy Christmas monologue is going to stay in last place. And last place is relative. We're ranking 12 moments in a show that's been on for 48 seasons. So
we're ranking 12 of the best. We're
12 of the best.
Favorite. Yeah. So someone's got to be in last place. Someone's got to be in last place.
I don't even rank in the top 8 of my dad's favorite kids, and he has 2. So it's, it's fine. But that's to get the ball rolling. I'd probably put this at 9.
To be fair, I was picking from another one that I knew would be a confirmed 9th, and I thought this had the chance to potentially stay at 8 instead of 9. So I feel okay, but I got this one.
Okay.
Out.
So you're feeling good about that because I'm also feeling good about this placement.
I'll sacrifice it because I'm gonna get
Bill. What do you think about this?
Yeah, and Haskell brings up a great point too. I have so many recurring characters on my list, but I've avoided them because it's so easy to go, oh wait, when did she do that? Target lady? Was that when she was in the cat? So it's really easy to kind of stay away from those.
That was my other one.
Yeah, exactly. So I will make it a unanimous 9th place, not last place, but 9th place.
Yeah. Okay, so you guys are making me feel good about my Eddie Murphy monologue pick not being in last place anymore. But who knows? Someone can name something and it can slot right underneath this. So we're gonna put this in the 9th position for now. And Bill, I'm gonna circle back to you for your final pick. This is the last one you're gonna be bringing to the table. And what do you want to talk about?
Well, since Haynes isn't here, what I'm going to do is name 5 of my favorite moments here and let you guess which one. Love you, Haynes. Miss you. This is really hard because I have so much left, obviously, with 40 alumni and everything that goes along with it. But I want to make sure I get this one in. I'm going to mention the Will Ferrell cold open from his first hosting in 2005, season 30. It opens up backstage and he's just kind of walking around and he's got the inner monologue going on in his head and he's talking to Tina and he's calling her a bitch. And then Parnell comes up to him and starts talking to him. And in his head, he's going, what's this guy's name? Glenn? Yeah, Glenn. It's definitely Glenn. And eventually, Amy comes in and then Finesse comes out and he does this whole thing with reminding himself not to call him Keenan. Keenan's just been on the show for like a year or two. So, it's the 2 black guys. I can't mix them up. Finesse, not Keenan. And then he calls him Keenan anyway. And then eventually it gets to Lauren and he's like, oh, this guy. So, we get all the great moments. We all love the backstage stuff that goes on when they go back there and we get to see everything that's going on. So this was such a great return after a couple years away from the show. He was such a huge movie star at the time, and to see him come back with this cast was great. So that's my pick. Cold Open 2005.
Yeah, this one is really fun, and the kind of backstage cold opens are something that we saw a lot, obviously, in the original first 5 years of the show, and like kind of a locker room set, which is always a lot of fun. But something we don't see as much these days. I mean, maybe we'll see it in like a pre-tape, obviously, with the Please Don't Destroy guys. But something I'd like to see the show return to, in this kind of format. Haskell, I'm going to go to you first. What do you think of this pick? And do you have a gut feeling of where you'd rank it?
such a special moment for me. I've said on the podcast before, I grew up watching SNL like when I was a kid, like a little kid. It's just a thing in my family. So I don't remember the first time like I stayed up to watch it live. I was probably like a little kid. But I always said watching Jimmy Fallon in Fever Pitch in 2000, coming out in 2005 ish, was like when I was like, I can't believe I missed Jimmy Fallon on SNL. I want to I want to stay up and watch it. And I always kind of put this episode as the first time that I was like, I have to stay up and I want to watch SNL, not with my parents. I just want to stay up and watch it. And like Bill said, it was like, Will Ferrell is really hitting his stride movie star career wise. So this is a special episode for me, special cold open. And I will remember that "Don't Say Keenan" line until I die. Like, it's a great line. So, this is where it gets tough. I think we've gone through some very iconic moments. As much as I personally love this moment again, I would keep it somewhere in the 6-7 range.
Yeah, so 6-7 range would put it, around Meet Your Second Wife, Sandler Family Reunion, and Norm's monologue. I kind of feel, and just to kind of start directing us somewhere, I kind of feel like I'd put it, I don't know, like between Family Reunion and Norm Macdonald's monologue.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like right after Family Reunion. I think this is good.
Okay.
It's a great monologue, but I don't think it would rank above the halfway
Bill,
right now.
What do you think? Obviously, this is your pick, so
I'm fine with that. Hurt my feelings.
Well, I mean, I just out of curiosity, where do you think it should land?
Again, it's impossible with this small sample size to, everything can't be number one. Right. Yeah, I think it's probably that's probably accurate, right around the Family Reunion. So yeah, I'm okay with that.
Got it. Okay, cool. So we're gonna put it at number 7 here on our list, and I think that feels right. Haskell, I'm gonna go to you now for your last pick. What do you want to choose?
Yeah, so I can't go 3 monologues. So there's a monologue that I really like, but I'm going to have to put that to the side. So I already kind of sat here and was like, oh, here's a sketch from the Bill Hader era of the show that only I think people who watch the show at that time understand. And then I was like, let's rank it last, I'm going to do the same thing. And I don't have high hopes, but it was a moment that was really special for me because it was that's my cast. It'll always be my cast, Sammy. I know you feel very similar. So I'm going with Andy Samberg's return to hosting, and I'm putting the Vogel checks in there. You know me. I'm just a little Vogelcheck super fan. I don't know. I feel like I bring up the Vogelchecks on this podcast more than anybody else. Times 3. But it was great. That was served as like the little mini reunion for that era of the show. They brought back a few of Andy Samberg's contemporaries for that sketch. And I always said, like, that type of sketch with the body humor, especially with them kissing each other and all that, and licking each other, that comes across really creepy unless you can see how much that cast really cared for each other. And to have that come back and them do that as their kind of reunion was kind of a really, really awesome moment. It was only a couple years after that cast had I think it was the 39 finale. So really it was only like a year removed from a lot of those people leaving, or 2 years removed in Bill Hader and Kristen or Andy Samberg and Kristen Wiig's case. But still, it was really nice to see them all back in that moment. I was like, I think that was my first year of college. So it has like that on my own personal timeline, a special moment. So got to put it on there, even if it's not going to rank that high.
I mean, if you bring up the Volgacheks, the most, maybe I'm at number 2 because I love the Volgacheks. This is great. Rebecca, I know you wanted to hop in. what are your thoughts? And do you have a feeling about where you want to rank this?
Yeah, I mean, this is peak physical comedy, and it's wild that they were able to have so many successful, like, occurrences of it because, like, you would think it would get old, but it kinda just doesn't, which is funny because I feel like SNL sometimes can beat a sketch down and it will get tired, but especially when one is, like, the biggest joke is just the physical comedy. This one, I love the vocal checks. This specific instance, maybe not my top, like, ranked, so I definitely think it's either slot number, like, 10 or 11 in this case, but I'm really happy you brought it up.
Yeah, I kind of, no offense to your pick, Rebecca, but I'm feeling it's above the Californians for me, personally, and maybe below Eddie's monologue. Bill, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I actually think it would be below the Californians, so I'll make it really interesting and
Mm,
tie this up.
this is
Vocal
this is
checks
interesting.
had a lot of diminishing returns for me, especially at this point. And as exciting as the Andy hosted episode was, this was not the highlight for me. So yeah, I think I would put this below the Californians. Get John on the back.
Haskell, what
We're
do you think?
split down the middle.
Well, because I am such a mature podcaster and have shown that through my time as a super fan, I'm okay ranking it as 11. You know, but you all owe me one.
Yep. All right. Yeah. I guess I was on your side though, buddy. But as a host, I feel like I got to yield as well. So we're gonna go with vocal checks here in the last place position. But who knows? Maybe what I say next is gonna be terrible. So that could take that spot. Guys, this is the last pick, and I'm feeling a little stressed because there's so many things, so many moments that I've wanted to talk about, and we haven't. And I'm trying to decide: do I triple dip the Sandler episode? Because I kind of feel like I might, but at the same time, there's just like a modern classic sketch that I'm also toying with. So maybe at the end we'll kind of rapid fire stuff that we didn't talk about. But okay. I think I'm gonna go with. I gotta stick with my heart. I am gonna go back to the Sandler episode, and I'm going to pick the Chris Farley song that he sings. I know a lot of times on the show we kind of debate. Why do we watch SNL? Is it always for those just hilarious sketches? Is SNL all about the funny? But when you kind of grow up with these icons on your screen, for a show that's been on for almost 50 years, you have the opportunity to kind of capture certain moments and, go from comedy to, something that's a little more focused on, emotion and, this Chris Farley song that Adam Sandler, did on the show, as a tribute to him that I've been fortunate enough to see him do live twice. And there's never a dry eye in the house. It's just so great. It's just so iconic. Just like you know, uh, a beautiful moment to his friend. And Sandler has always been known for a guy who as he's gotten so successful in the industry, always supporting his friends, having them be in his movies and whatever. And he is probably you could argue the big reason or one of the biggest reasons why you know people still kind of talk or he's kind of like always puts Chris Farley's memory forward like in the culture, even though it's already been like 20-25 years since we lost him. And the comedy alone and everything that Chris Farley did on its own is made him so memorable and so such a force. But it's kind of moments like these there, for people in the younger generation can kind of discover Chris Farley and everything that he was able to do on SNL and in collaboration with Adam Sandler. And the song itself is just great. Just like Sandler, the Sandman always when he picks up his guitar, he has so many great, funny, endearing songs, and this is one of them. So I'm going to let Haskell hop in here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know if I can remember. There's probably only a handful of more poignant moments in the show's history, and it was in that moment watching it live. Like, I don't think it's almost spoiler alert if we ever wanted to rank the all-time alumni or first-time back episodes, because we know what it is. And I have never, going back to 2005, watching the show, I don't have an episode I was more excited for. And it was in that moment late in the show that it hit me. Like, I felt like that's why, after all these years, Sandler came back, was for that moment. I think he wanted, Farley's not around anymore to host. And I think he wanted one more moment on Saturday Night Live with his friend. And unfortunately, it can't happen in person. So he came back and he did that. So, I had it on my list. And again, I just didn't want to go back to that episode too many times, but that's a great moment. And I thought we were done with top 5 moments, but I could push that one into the top 5.
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased because it's my pick, but I feel the same way. Rebecca or Bill, as far as ranking goes, what are you guys feeling at this point? I mean, obviously, we already have a Sandler moment in the top 5. I Was Fired is at number 2, but as kind of Haskell was alluding to, like, this could be just like an all-time great number 1 pick episode for a cast member to come back and host. So with that in mind, maybe we slot another one of these in the top 5 or even the top 3. Anyone have a gut feeling at this moment? Bill?
Yeah, I think it's probably number 3 or number 4. Same as you guys have said. I mean, and this has come up a couple times on different Superfan takeovers. I mean, it's just such an incredible moment. Having lived through the tragedy of him passing away like that, and him being my favorite cast member at that moment, it's such a huge moment. To have Adam come back and be able to do this, have the platform. I had seen this, just like you, Sammy. I had seen him do this live before he hosted. So to see him come and do it, I was not expecting it that night. I didn't have any idea that he was going to come out on stage and do it. Can't watch it without tearing up. I've seen it 7,000 times and it still hits me. So yeah, I would say probably number 3 or number 4.
So, Rebecca, I'm going to go to you because, obviously, like I said, we have I Was Fired at number 2. Would you put this above or below I Was Fired?
Well, after that speech, that impacts. But I would do it after. I Was Fired. I think it's a number 3, because like when you think back to the episode, I Was Fired comes to mind for me at least first, and then this is a good second. Like, I mean, we couldn't have Sandler Family Reunion above the Chris Farley song. And looking through this list here, I think number 3, Before White Like Me, After I Was Fired, is probably the perfect slot.
I'm feeling good about that as well. And I do feel like also, as Bill mentioned, this is something that, didn't necessarily originate on the show. He had been touring this. I'm not saying that docks at any points or anything like that, but if we have to kind of make these decisions, this wasn't necessarily the first time. I mean, I'm sure it was the first time so many people saw this, but if we kind of have to use that as a way to make this decision, I think putting it just below I Was Fired feels good. Is everyone okay with it being above White Like Me, or would you put it below White Like Me? Does anyone have an opinion on that, Haskell?
I like it at 3.
You like it at 3? Bill?
Yep, sounds good.
All right, so we have our top 12 moments here that we've gotten together of the returning cast member moments. So I'm going to read them from 12 to 1. At number 12, we have the Vogelcheck sketch from the Andy Samberg hosted episode. At number 11, the Californians from the Bill Hader hosted episode. At number 10, the Eddie Murphy Christmas 2019 monologue. At number 9, the Norm Macdonald monologue. At number 8, the Will Ferrell Backstage cold open from 2005. At number 7, the Sandler Family Reunion sketch. At number 6, Meet Your Second Wife. And number 5, Quotable Caddyshack. Number 4, White Like Me. And number 3, Adam Sandler's Chris Farley song. And number 2, I Was Fired, the Adam Sandler monologue. And at number 1, we have Goodnight Saigon from the Will Ferrell hosted episode from 2009. I think we ended up with a pretty great list. Does anyone feel like there's any changes you would make before we go into rapid fire, or do we feel pretty good about this? Yeah,
I feel good. This is solid.
Yeah, I think this is solid, and everybody listening and watching at home, you can let us know how we did. And if we did a good job or a bad job, we would love to hear your feedback. I'm going to let everybody here before I ask for plugs. I'm going to go to Bill first and say if there's any rapid fire things you want to chime in on before we close out, that would be great.
Yeah, just a couple. Dana Carvey's episode in season 20, one of the few highlights. He did Pepperboy with Sandler. Chris Farley hosting with doing Mary Catherine Gallagher with Molly Shannon, two of the best physical comedians on the show. And then Marty Short in 96, the very first Celebrity Jeopardy, he got to do Jerry Lewis. So I didn't include it just because, I think it's more of a Will Ferrell showcase, but still historical.
No, absolutely. And Bill, why don't you tell the people where they can find you as well?
Thanks for having me, Sammy. Follow me at BKLove73.
Amazing as always. And Haskell, tell the people where they can find you, and then you can also give some kind of shout outs here at the end as well.
Yeah, just a couple of sketches. The monologue I wasn't able to get in was the Jimmy Fallon Christmas monologue, where he parodies Baby Come Home, which is my favorite Christmas song, so it's very catchy to me. And he does a whole lap around kind of the backstage area with, pretty much getting the whole cast involved there. I also included New Cast or Arcade Fire with Tina Fey. And I kind of wrapped up her monologue with that and introducing all the new cast members there. And not a sketch, but if it ever got filmed, Chevy Chase versus Bill Murray backstage fight would have been number 1 on the list. That people would have loved that. But unfortunately, just a story for now. You can follow me at Andrew Haskell, Twitter, Instagram. I got a lot of shows coming up. I'll be at Rhode Island Comedy Connection on May 7th and the 24th, and at Comics Roadhouse at Mohegan Sun on June 8th, and Last Comics Standing at Comics Roadhouse at Mohegan Sun. First round dates TBA. So follow me on Twitter and Instagram so you can get those dates.
Amazing. And yeah, guys, definitely go check out Haskell if he's in at a show near you. And Rebecca, thank you so much for joining us. As we said earlier, your first non-draft episode. I hope you had a good time. If you have any, rapid fire honorable mentions you want to share, you can tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This was super fun. I have 2 that are not all-time greats, but they're in more recent days, and I think one of them is Will Ferrell coming back in 2018 doing Reality Stars, where him and Cecily are filming a reality show, Real Housewives-esque, all fake, and they come back to Arizona. And it's seeing more of my SNL cast growing up, like being with this legend, holding a dog who's just, they're all cracking. Like Cecily 80 can't hold it together. And it's probably just like putting myself into their shoes, how cool that must have been. And like, they can't control themselves because they're such big fans and they think it's funny. Then the other one is a pre-tape in 2020 with Kristen Wiig. It's the Christmas, and it's the Christmas mom where she's like, I got a robe, and it keeps going back. And yeah, it's just always funny. And like, I know I immediately sent it to my mom. It's very relatable. And now every single time, like I see a robe in my mind, I'm just like, and I got a robe. And that's a really good showing of Kristen Wiig. So both of these are new, not recurring or anything like that. And I'm big fans. You can find me on all social media at Rebarbecue. And if you're in New York, reach out to me because I have an upcoming show at the Pit, a sketch show. So at Rebarbecue. Twitter is probably most reachable, and then Instagram, anywhere else. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. That's awesome. Very fun. And really quickly, any last minute honorable mentions for myself? Farewell, Mr. Bunting was that sketch at the end. When I was kind of going back and forth on, you kind of forget that, Fred Armisen, he hosted SNL, and that was, a sketch that he was in. Just a modern classic sort of pre-tape. But I kind of leaned towards the nostalgia there for that last pick. There's a great moment from season 6 of the show where Bill Murray during the cold open is kind of roasting, the new not ready for primetime players. It's so cool just seeing him and Eddie Murphy, like a young Eddie Murphy, like next to each other, like, on the couch backstage. That's such a great moment. There's also, I don't know if we've mentioned Dana Carvey coming back and doing George Bush Sr. With Will Ferrell's George W. Bush. That's such a good moment. There's so many great cast monologues, Jason Sudeikis, Jimmy Fallon's Christmas monologue. And finally, for monologues, Andy Samberg's impression off. That was like such a fun one. Bringing in both Seth Meyers and Bill Hader for that one was a lot of fun. And before I, tell you guys where you can find me, I'm going to tell you what we got going on here at the Saturday Night Network. As I mentioned at the top of the episode, there is, the chance, this episode's coming out, the day that they're going to kind of decide what's going on with the Writers Guild of America strike. In the case that the strike does not go through, we have a new episode of Saturday Night Live this Saturday with host Pete Davidson and musical guest Lil Uzi Vert. So if the strike does not happen, it will be business usual here at the SNN with the Hot Take show on Saturday, as well as all of our Pete Davidson coverage next week. In the event that there is a strike, Bupkis is the name. We are going to be doing a lot of Bupkis coverage here on the SNN, starting with Wednesday. We actually have an SNL Stories with Dave Cyrus that we got to talk to him. He's the co-creator of Bupkis along with Pete Davidson. Got to talk to him about Bupkis and his time as a staff writer at SNL. It was a really great conversation. So that's coming out on Wednesday. So please check that out, as well as our Bupkis coverage, which will be starting here on Thursday. Me, Amanda Barkin, and John Schneider will be back, and we will be covering the first 2 episodes of Bupkis, and we'll be kind of recapping that, and then we'll be recapping the rest of the episodes, depending on what is going on at Saturday Night Live and with the strike. And then, if, the strike does happen after that, we will be doing some season 48 wrap-up podcasts. So that's what we've got going on. We're a moving target here, but, make sure you guys check us out for any content or, what we got cooking here, whether it's Saturday Night Live or Bupkis related. And you guys can find me at that Sammy Kay on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Definitely check out our past Superfan Takeovers and let us know, what you want us to talk about in the future. And obviously follow us at the SNL Network on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all that stuff. I've been Sammy Kay. These have been the Superfans, and I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Thanks for coming.